what dentists looking to acquire their first dental practice most know. Now, I have this question for you, joining and getting started with your journey of practice ownership. Considering particularly an acquisition, would you pay $900,000 for a practice that is worth $570,000? Imagine a scenario where you are paying for a dental practice $900,000 that you fall in love with, right? It showed you the numbers, beautiful equipment, nice seller, good location. But then you discover that it's actually only worth $571,000. And that, my friends, is a $329,000 mistake. And this is not a hypothetical situation. That is a real deal that was reviewed with an actual client, right? And so what I'm going to focus on tonight is I'm going to show you how to make sure this never happens to you. Whether you are seriously just looking to buy a practice this year or just exploring future options, I want you to walk away tonight with the clarity and the tools that will allow you to evaluate a deal like an insider, not like a dreamer, okay? So before I dive into numbers and systems, and I just want to quickly share why this work means so much to me. Now, for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, I am Maritza Duran, and I started in this industry as a dental assistant. I worked my way up to office manager, then became a regional manager to a DSO, managing millions in collections, staff, and systems. And now I founded MDent Consulting, where I basically help dentists acquire their startup practice or launch their startup practice or acquire their practice and turn it into $1 million practices, avoiding mistakes that really make dentists regret the process of practice ownership. So a little bit about myself. I am the CEO and founder of MDent Consulting, adjunct faculty at Temple University, and I've helped over 500 dentists launch or acquire their practices. So this is actually very, very personal to me. And I'm going to be sharing with you the story of a few of my clients that have gone through the process of the journey of wanting to start their first practice, debating between acquiring an established practice or going into the route of a startup instead, and how an acquisition turned into something that was a successful story. But all of the nuances and the information that we need to focus on as part of this particular model of you purchasing your very first practice, right? So let's talk about why you are here and who this is really for. And I want you to tell me in the comments if you are doing an acquisition, if you're thinking about doing a startup, if you've already launched your practice and you're just looking to learn and gain more knowledge and strategies and skills to build your practice, your first dental practice. This is kind of what I want to know. But this webinar I designed for someone who is potentially a resident, an associate, or someone that is dreaming about owning their own practice, but they don't know or feel nervous about the whole risks, right? If that is you, this webinar is for you. If you don't actually need to have a deal or even a broker yet to help you with these things. And what is going to be very helpful about our time together today is that you're going to have the knowledge to understand the difference between an acquisition that it's meant for the large DSO groups and for you as a private practitioner getting into the weeds of trying to purchase a location that it's avoiding all of the multiples and all of the things that brokers like to use for the most part. So I'm going to teach you a different strategy and method that has worked with us, a blueprint, if you will, of how to evaluate a practice, taking care and into account all of the nuances of the tangibles and intangibles that I'm going to share with you a little bit more on. So let's talk a little bit more about the price of not knowing and why not asking the right questions can actually cost you more than you think, even if you're working with a broker, a CPA, or someone in the dental world that is going to help you with this thing. So over the next 40 minutes or so, I am going to spill for you the blueprint that is going to allow you to, and the framework that we developed that is going to allow you to do evaluation, save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process so that you can start on the right track for your first location if you are considering doing an acquisition, because our consulting is not limited to just first-time practice owners launching a practice. We have a framework that also works for those that are looking to acquire their first practice, and this is the method that I use. So if you're a dental resident or recent grad, if you're an associate weighing in your options of startup versus acquisition, or anyone who's just simply nervous and it's trying to pull the trigger and it has questions and concerns about the entire process. So now in dentistry, this is going to be something very important for you to know. Patient attrition can range from 10 to 40% annually when you basically take over an existing practice. And that's before you even change ownership. So imagine if you walk into the wrong practice and you make poor transition decisions. That means that you can potentially lose revenue and trust overnight, right? I've seen this situation happen years ago. I had a dentist who acquired a practice on the West Coast, and he reached out to me very late because of the time frame. I'm in New York. He was in I think Seattle, and his thing was, Maritza, all the patients are requesting their charts. All the staff left me. I'm only left with a dental assistant, and I'm pretty sure she's not going to show up to work tomorrow. This is the worst thing that can happen to a dentist who is acquiring their first practice if they don't take into account the due diligence that is required for you to make informed decisions and prepare yourself for that transition, okay? So, dentists typically get, in other scenarios, you get basically emotionally attached to the location because of the commute, or whether, the numbers for the office look great, right? Good vibes, pretty office, but without the understanding of the systems, the team, the insurance mix, PPO, 2 years later, you can be a burned out, barely breaking even type of practice owner, right? This is the cost of not knowing how to analyze what you're actually walking into. And so we are going to start talking a little bit about the actual valuation process, or the two options of the valuations. And then I'm going to walk you through the framework that I believe has the best chance for those private practitioners that are looking into stepping into ownership. They are looking to acquire a practice that it's below $1 million mark, whether it's 300,000, 500,000. But if the number has healthy numbers, there are ways in which you can find ways to reduce your upfront costs and negotiate a good offer without disrespecting the seller and making sure that you are not overpaying. So I'm going to walk you through that. So let's talk about what most brokers are comfortable and used to doing, right? Because it's the one that makes the most sense in terms of the numbers. Most brokers use the EBITDA framework, which is earnings before interest and total. I can't even remember the entire system for how it works, but basically it's just looking at the earnings, applying multiples, and boom, here's the price, right? But what this system ignores is the patient loyalty, the staff morale, and broken systems, right? That's why I recommend, and I fell in love when I started getting involved with the ValuePoint system, because what this system does is it blends financial metrics with practice financials and the practice's health, right? So it asks questions like, how strong is the team? How loyal is the patient base? And how is there room for growth? Is there space to be maxed out? All of those things you're going to be able to have as part of your thing, right? Because you would not buy a car just by checking the mileage, right? Or you are not going to just open the hood, brakes, and make sure it drives. It's the same concept for where you are running in starting your very first practice. So that's what brings me to the foundation of our talk today, which is what I call the 6 pillars of acquisition success. So the framework, right? You're not just buying a building, you're inheriting a legacy. And these 6 pillars are going to help you evaluate the entire full picture, what you can measure and what you must feel out, right? So I always use this framework both for my startup and my acquisition projects. And let me know if someone has. Good evening, Roberta. Thank you for joining us. Let me just continue here. So basically, at this point, you're not buying just the building, the equipment, and all of these things. You're inheriting something that we call the intangibles. So all of these things, the systems that I develop, are usually broken down into these 6 pillars or this framework, right? So you start with the vision, the people that you work with, the numbers, how you're able to review those numbers, the training, all of the things that they have in systems, and obviously the influence that is going to require of you as a new practice owner in order to get the team and the patients and reduce that attrition rate and convert the patients and have that trust that is going to allow you to give you the peace of mind that is necessary for you to focus on growing the practice and meeting it where it is and tapping into its gap and its basic potential, bringing in your strategies and the changes and the things that you want to do. So this is how we protect our clients from this, surprise post-closing things. And the way that I break down the process is we have what we call all of the pre-closing, right? All of the things that need to happen before you actually sign the lease. I have conversations all the time. I have a call tomorrow with a dentist that was going into seeing a location, working with a broker, a CPA that is helping them with the transition. However, there were a lot of questions that would otherwise be a surprise to the doctor post-closing if this is not addressed beforehand, stipulating a lot of the post-closing things beforehand. But if you're a first-time practice owner and you're just navigating your journey for the first time, it is likely that you're not going to know what questions to ask and how to prepare yourself, thinking that after the closing is when you focus and you begin ownership. It starts a lot earlier than that. And so when we are talking today, we're breaking it down into the framework, the pillars, and how each of those pillars have a pre-opening due diligence process and a post-opening due diligence and implementation process and framework that you must incorporate in order to make the acquisition a successful one. Okay, so things that happened or that we call the intangibles. The intangibles are the patient's trust, the team's morale, the things that you cannot see on paper. And I'm going to talk to you about the case study that I'm going to share with you. And for those of you who just joined us, my starting question was, would you pay $900,000 for a practice that it's worth $570,000? That $300,000 difference there, it's a huge mistake that I've seen dentists go about looking at just the numbers or the framework and system that most brokers like to work with, which is the EBITDA multiples, just looking into the numbers, if you will, and leaving aside all of the intangibles and the things that you cannot actually see that the numbers are reflecting. That would reduce the attrition, that will increase the attrition and reduce your cash flow, causing for you to have that really high purchase of your practice at $900,000 alone, that it's not the same as the one that you would get if you were doing a startup, that it's gradual payments. So you have a lot more expenses than the seller did because their basic overhead has already hit a plateau. They don't have as much debt as you do, but you're coming in, inheriting a team that it's a legacy team with high salaries because they've been in the practice for a long time, with a new loan that it's paying off. So you're increasing your overhead. right? And a lot of the things that I see with brokers and people that are working in this space is, and this is something that off the chart or off the record, I should say, I've had one broker tell me, I said, I would love to help your, clients figure out a way to prepare for ownership afterwards and look into things that will protect the investment moving forward. And they said, no, this is not something that works to my advantage. The higher the value that I'm able to present on the valuation, the better it is for me in terms of a commission. So this is the conversation that is going out there. And when you are working with someone that it's looking at the more that I sell the practice, that the practice sells for, the bigger my commission. It's not the ideal scenario for you, as this is your investment. Okay. So we are here, and I'm glad that you guys made it. Those of you who are here. And if you have to watch the recording and you want to hop on a call with me afterwards, by all means do that. This is how we are going to protect you from these surprises, right? By understanding the needs for the intangibles and the tangibles, right? So it's flipped because, again, these are things that you look at pre-closing, right? And you think it's the intangible, but the financials, the equipment, and the property is something that you can see, feel, and touch, if you will. But post-closing is when you actually get into the practice and you start to discover that the patient morale is not there, the staff morale, that the goodwill and the loyalty of the patients. So how do you prepare for that before actually owning your practice? And that brings me to a real world, case study for how we use the point valuation system. This is the same framework that I use for my client who didn't just fall in love with a practice and the idea of ownership. We explore a lot of options and so on and so forth, but we looked at the numbers, the team culture, the patient base, and today she's a successful practice owner of an acquisition. We made decisions based on facts, not based on emotions. We let the numbers do the talking. We prepared for our practice, and now we are able to reap the rewards, right? And so one of the things that I want to share with you, and do we have, let me see how much time we have left. We have a couple of minutes left. I would love to share with you. Let me see if it takes you to what this practice valuation was for, right? The seller valuated the practice based on the numbers and the history of the location for $900,000. And this is based on their collection. They had 3 years of over $900,000, almost $1 million in yearly revenue, which to them, 85% of their expected collections would have sufficed to make their valuation a $900,000 deal. But what they didn't account for, which is what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today, is how our system basically was able to incorporate a lot of the intangibles, not just the numbers that were shown to us as part of the P&Ls, the taxes, all of the expenses, whether the doctor's staying on or not. All of those things were able to give us the information that we needed to make an informed decision about the practice. So this is the framework that I developed. And are you guys seeing my screen? Let me know in the chat. Is everyone okay? I just want to see if you guys are able to see what I'm seeing here, which is the valuation system. Okay. So yes, Roberta said, Amy, and perfect. So, okay, great. So let's go over a typical 8-point valuation system and why I think that it's so powerful to start thinking about practice valuations, not just from the numbers standpoint, but incorporating some of the numbers and looking into the big picture, including the in a lot of the intangibles and the things that are important to do. So this is basically the information that we had here for the total collection for 2023, 2021, right after COVID. So the numbers range between the $900,000. This is hence they wanted $900,000 for the practice, right? So how we added the value points is basically we give 100 points based on different 8 categories, right? let me see how it is. The first one is collections. The office collected a certain dollar amount, and if it's below a certain number, you give them a certain range of numbers. Location is the second key component that we look at when we're doing the valuation point system. Then we look at the space, whether or not, how many operatories, is there room for expansion, all of those things. The patient is an important one, right? How active are the patients that are active, right? If we're talking about a practice that has been open for 30 years, and I've seen this more often than not, you are going to have patients that relocate, patients that, if you're a general dentist and your age demographic group for your patient pool, it's a certain age group and it's over 50, 60s, they are either, moving down south or they are changing and COVID happened. So there are a lot of changes that happen to the patient mix. And let's be real, team members are not very diligent and active at updating and inactivating patients within the system. I've been there. I've been in the industry for 20 years, more than 20 years, 25 years now. And what I can tell you is that the day-to-day operations take away the ability for us to just go in and sit down. Like, we barely have any time to just sit there and do cleanup. It barely ever happens unless you are put in a position that you have to go through a transition and so on and so forth. So we do not want to fall into the trap of, hey, patients that are coming in, how active are the active patients? So these are things that are important. Who's staying on and who is actually transitioning out? Because there are a lot of situations in which the team that leaves, the legacy team, they are able to take some patients with them. I know of some states that dental hygienists are able to basically open up practices. And I've seen this happen before, where they work, then an acquisition takes place. They go in, they do a partnership with someone else, and then off the patients go and they follow the hygienists. You do not want to do this. So you want to be able to do all the dirty work. And I will bet you, because I've seen this happen before, the doctors that have worked with us are able to make the difficult decisions because they have a backup team that is there to support them in this transition period, right? I've seen it happen in instances in which I had two pediatric specialists that acquired a practice. This goes back 5-6 years ago. And through the systems and the framework that we are putting in place, we were able to discover certain things that were not to the advantage or to the benefit of the buyers, the cost of the employees and their loyalty to the practice. What happened? We basically made the decision to let them go, while the owners or the sellers were encouraging us to keep the team. When we had some interactions and did some things, it was best to part ways. And it was a tough decision that the dentist, I remember vividly in one of our meetings, said, if it wasn't because we were working with you, Maritza, I would have stayed with the team and then I would have regretted later on, because we had a team in place to support each other throughout. We need to start looking for someone, asking around, or having people apply for the position. It's a lot easier to do that. These are tough decisions and things to do, but you want to do it rather earlier than post-closing, right? Because then the office is yours and it becomes a lot more challenging to do that. There's no perfect way of doing things. Every situation is different. I've seen beautiful, perfect fits for the transition, but these are things that you want to account for and do some due diligence beforehand so that you're not basically putting yourself in that position. So we're talking about this deal that was offered, they were asking $900,000 based on their valuation. And after we did all of our due diligence, taking into account, yes, sure, the numbers look great, but here are some other pointers and some things for us to consider. So we basically gave them on these points a range. And from this, we gave them 59 points. Based on all of the nuances, we have a questionnaire that we sent to the doctor. The seller had to complete it. And this is basically how it works, the calculations. So we do the practice market value, fair market value. So instead of saying, and this is where for us or for you guys that are joining me here, you are not a DSO that has a, revenue and resources, right? To just go in and say, show me the numbers, and then I'm just going to do the multiples for a percentage, right? We're not in that situation. If you're here, it's because you are a first time practice owner, private practitioner that already most likely has loans and costs of running your practice, and you want that, but at the end of the day, you're not going to have, over $1 million to inject into a practice that it's going to lose some money. This works for the DSOs because they have lower costs, lower overhead, and they have people in teams that rotate, and they just have the funds to be able to play around with their money. This is not our, situation as, first-time business owners. I'm, myself, a first-time business owner, and it's a lot on our family and our, relatives and the people that support us for us to just go and take this risk. So if we're able to minimize the risk by doing additional work, and I give you a lot of credit for showing up and being here tonight, this is going to be the best option for you to do. So this is our practice valuation. And to our, after we went back and forth, we were able to settle on a number that was actually worked for the seller and worked for the practice owner. We were able to reduce the number significantly. I think it was just over $20,000 more, if not, maybe. I think we actually ended up doing it at that exact rate for a lot of nuances and changes that took place. But at the end of the day, if you were working with a broker, it is likely that the broker would, encourage you to basically, this is a good number, this is a good practice, let's look at it together, and off you go. And you basically go into the practice, you do your closing, you have a $900,000 loan, maybe a little extra to do equipment and so on and so forth, $1 million of debt. And then you have all of the attrition, all of the things kick in, and you are setting yourself up for that 2-year burnout phase as a first-time practice owner. So let's talk about common pitfalls that that people avoid. And I saw someone in the chat say something about PPOs, and I'm going to touch a little bit on that. I'm going to share, a report for a practice that we did some work for that was an acquisition, so that we can take a look and how to analyze a lot of the other things, the charts, the accounts receivables, and all that other good stuff. But one thing that is also extremely important is the pitfalls and the mistakes that I see is of overvaluation, basically, because again, the brokers are going to be incentivized to working on a higher, than fair market value cost, because it is a commission-based type scenario. The PPO mix is another one. I see this more often than not. If you're inheriting or if you're taking over a practice that is a Delta Premier location and you're a general dentist, there is a reduction on the fee that you need to account for because insurance companies are reducing their fees. One of the things that I'm very proud of with my team is that we're able to get when you work with us and we're able to incorporate some of these nuances into the process pre-closing and into the price and the offer itself, that helps you lower that cost. But also we're able, on the flip side, for any insurance companies that are part of the top 5 carriers in the office where there is room for improvement on the negotiation side, we definitely help you reposition, renegotiate the fees. And also, very important, another mistake that I see is maintaining the fees of the practice from the seller under a hypothetical fee-for-service structure. And I'm going to tell you a little bit what that means. I have a case here in New York, and the seller was fee-for-service. They had like a new patient special, all great. We looked into the insurance mix. They participated with an insurance company directly. The fee for that insurance company was extremely low. We renegotiated a contract through an umbrella relationship, which was 55% higher reimbursement. And we said, to avoid any disruption of the patient status and so on and so forth, why don't we just try to renegotiate the fees directly with the carrier? Long story short, we reached out to the carrier. The carrier said, well, based on the fees that are being billed, the utilization of the practice, because we receive claims based on your private fees, this is the best offer. The offer was $1 extra. Why was that? Because the fee that we negotiated for that insurance carrier was $64 for a periodic exam. And the office was billing the insurance $40 for their periodic evaluation for the recare patients. The insurance company was paying $34 or something like that. They said 35, it's almost like getting you close to $40. Why would the insurance company, if you are billing them such low fees, bring it up to the market? They're not going to do that. And so one of the common mistakes that I see is that the seller's fees are under positioned. They're on the 40th or 30th percentile. And hence, they're billing those fees to the insurance companies. The insurance companies are saying, we're paying them some good fees. I've seen fees as low as $21 for a recare visit when I've worked on some of my acquisition projects. Bringing those fees up to date is very challenging because the insurance companies are not going to just give you 100% increase. They may give you a 20, 30% increase of what you are currently billing them. So extremely important that you look at the private fees and you compare them to the fair market value, and that you are negotiating your contracts under the transfer of ownership so that you are not under positioning your fees and inheriting those fees. What we've been able to accomplish, lower cost for the asking price and equity pretty much on the patient's charts, because we are able to renegotiate and increase the fees for the buyer. So this is just another thing. And team instability. That's another mistake that I see, is that when you're coming in, you need to understand what your break-even number is, what your overhead is going to look like, what your attrition rate is going to look like potentially, and be in a position where you know which team members are worth what they're saying, the changes that you want to put on, that you want to implement, so that they are willing and looking into staying if should you choose to keep them in the practice. Because if they're not going to the location and destination that you're determining is where you want to go, and you have your game plan in place, right? It's like showing up with a map and saying, this is where we're going. If this is not your destination, you need to get off the vehicle now, right? So that's the same scenario. So let me see what I have here as far as the report, so that we can take a look here and see what we have. Let me see. Areas of improvement and things to look into when the office is taking over. So number of new patient visits. Let me see here. Patients that are getting exams, crown and bridge. So these are things that the seller was not doing that potentially would bring in more revenue to the practice. So important things to definitely consider when you're doing that. How many production for new patients? Let me see, number of new patients a month. This is one of the important ones that I like to show my clients, is the net number of new patients, right? So new patients that are coming in 4 and then phasing out 11. So you basically have a hole on the back end. So patients are coming in from the front and they're just basically leaving through the back. So a lot of that is important for you, so you can create a strategy for how you're going to grow the practice afterwards. Now, another area is the prophy queens, are, hygienists that are just used to mingling and having a relationship with the patients, and they get an hour for the checkups and the cleanings of their legacy patients, legacy staff, and their department, it's actually struggling, right? The lack of systems. How many patients are establishing the practice and are not in recare, right? Patients that haven't shown up in the office in over 6 months or 18 months. So these are things that are extremely important for, you see here, okay, I think this was a healthy practice because the doctor's production, 67%, hygienist, 33%. On the flip side, we have another office that actually does have a the recare, I mean, I'm sorry, the perio and the recare, like the recare department, the hygiene department, it's at 15% of the overall production of the practice. So they're not even breaking even for their salaries. And these are some of the things that are so important for you to have a team that is going to help you map out, evaluate not just the cost of the practice as a whole for the purchase, but your overhead on the ongoing basis, and how to create the systems to make sure that you're showing the team, hey, this is where and why we need to make the following changes, so that they are on board with you and you are able to measure and go back and track all of the things that you're measuring and giving them these new targets and so on. Are you guys finding this helpful? Let me know in the chat if you're learning something. I'm going to open up some Q&A in a few, and we're almost there. Let me see. Roberta, thank you for, okay, great. Very awesome. So the three most common red flags that I see in acquisitions deals, first trap is overvaluation. The sellers asking prices and always reflect the reality. So always validate that. Trap number two is the PPO mix. Poor insurance contracts will basically bleed your cash flow, and you're not buying, you're not buying collections, you're buying profit, right? Trap number three is team stability. A beautiful office means nothing if the team basically is not on board with all of the changes that you are going to do or that you're going to try to implement, right? Which leads me to the next critical piece, which is protecting what you are buying, which is an intangible thing for the most part, which is the goodwill, right? So let's talk about a step-by-step valuation process and how we make those changes. So basically, what you want to look at as you're doing your 8-point valuation process is you're looking at collections, consistency, and growth over the recent years. You're looking at the geographic location, whether it's rural or urban, that area. The space and facility, the numbers of operations, whether or not there is room for expansion. You want to look at the patient base, what we were just covering, the likelihood of staff retention, right? Like the provider continuity, that's going to be important. The equipment, basically, like, is it advanced diagnostic, tools? Do you have the panoramic x-ray, CBT scanner, 3D printers? All of those inventory assets that are fixed assets within the practice are important for you to consider as part of the valuation system. Provider and staffing, right? Like the structure and the readiness of the team to grow, right? Because another thing that we face is that we have teams that have been in the office setting for many years, but their knowledge and their skills are a little bit outdated because the seller was not investing in training, or they are seasoned employees that are already set in their ways. And that is something that also basically can hinder your growth. And that's something that we want to avoid, right? So let's talk about the next, let me see here. Let's talk about the goodwill, what you're actually basically paying for, and creating a transition plan that actually protects your goodwill, right? One thing that, and I will go into the details about this picture, but respecting the legacy while making it your own is going to be key to having a happy and smooth transition. And I quoted this happy thing because that is the name of the patient that is actually on this picture here. And that day when I came to my client's office after the transition, it was a very, very stressful and emotional roller coaster for the owner, because this is the wife of one of the best friends of the seller of the practice. And it is one of those things where you feel concerned about, like, if this person likes me and I can earn their trust, I am going to be putting myself in a position where I'm going to reduce my attrition rate. Remember what I said earlier, 10 to 40% attrition. It's normal. And there are patients that leave and then they come back. But there are certain key patients and key employees that you want to be intentional about the entire process. If you're doing this alone, I want you, for the love of God, to just walk away with this tonight. While you want to respect the legacy, you want to make it your own. One of the things that that was important to me as I was observing the doctor interact with some of the patients. And yes, you send out the letter and the message, and some patients are made aware of the change, but they're skeptical. This is a huge transition to go from their long-term 30-year dentist into the new one. And so the strategy that I share with my doctor, which was very important, is basically just owning the change and knowing that it's yours and your credibility, your authority, your social proof. So one of the very first things that I did when I came to the office that day was I said, have we been working on the brand? You were making changes, you're retaining the website, and all of these changes. We immediately went to work to put together the QR code and like some social proof from other patients that had already come to the office, gone through the transition, how their experience was from the seller and transitioning to the new owner, and putting it out there, visible, where everyone that comes into the practice can see, even the team members, because the patients, the goodwill that you paid for, right? The patients, once they show you that they trust you, you are putting yourself in a position where you want to own that new interaction, that new relationship that you're entering into. And from that new relationship that you're building with them, tapping into the changes that are positive that you're incorporating for the future, the technology, the CE courses that you have gone there to take, all of making the excitement about the changes that you're incorporating and making them part of that. So we have letters of transition, of introducing yourself, a video script so that you can send it to the patients, but nothing beats the interaction of that one-on-one interaction, and preparing yourself with tangible tools and things that the patients can use immediately. So on this day, we had about 10 reviews that we were able to tap into. And Happy was one of those patients that did not know how to use a cell phone and scan a QR code and was able to do it. She was thrown off by like the technology and all of the things that the office was still outdated, same picture frames, all of the things were still the same, but just the feel, the ambience, and some of these little intangible things that were changing new to her created some form of excitement for what's there to come. And so my advice to you is, because I know and I've seen this firsthand, you feel that they are somewhat, and they are obviously loyal to the owner, but you need to basically take ownership of your success story and what you bring to the table, own your success, and make them excited for what's to come under your ownership and leadership. And I guarantee you, they're going to trust you more. And we basically were able to give her peace of mind, because Happy, our most patient, she was so like looking forward to making sure she was happy staying in the practice, gave the basic approval and confirmation that yes, I'm staying on, right? And patient after patient after patient, with the strategy, with her owning, and instead of dwelling, oh, the doctor retired, how and so on and so forth. No, everything. It's about the excitement of you and under your new ownership. So that's something that extremely is important. So let's talk about the things that you can do to help you basically prepare for doing the acquisition or the due diligence before you actually open, right? And some of the things, and I'm going to actually have my team, if you guys are interested, send you a copy of that due diligence checklist. I don't know how many of you told me on the chat where you are in the journey, if you have recently acquired, or if you have, if you're considering and looking into going into practice ownership. I want to be able to make it where you have a a smooth transition post closing. And basically, the way that you structure that is doing a step-by-step handover schedule, including all the critical tasks and responsibilities. You're going to want to define roles during the transition so that each team member knows their role during that period to avoid confusion. Because the last thing you want to do is have too many hands in the pot, many patients having conversations with patients that are, not in the same philosophy. You have a new culture, not a new culture, I should say, values and all of these things that the team has yet to get to know and familiarize themselves with when it comes to getting to know you. And so you want to be able to have those nurturing moments with the team and have clarity and have systems and checklists in place so that you can basically make the transition easier for them as well, right? You're going to want to have post-closing support from the seller, right? So you want to have them stay, make introductions and so on and so forth, and maintain consistent communication with the staff, with the patients, with any information. Like for instance, we had a claim that was processed as out of network. There's that whole transition period. First thing is we communicate with the patient. We basically make sure that we are more intentional with every interaction with the patient. Encourage the team to give you feedback. That's another thing that I want you to do, like holding weekly check-ins, gathering feedback from them and addressing any issues, starting to do huddles. Many seller practices do not ever have meetings. And what you want to do is, and it doesn't need to be something that it's an agenda or very well prepared, it's pulling up that schedule and going over who should receive what, and so on and so forth. One of the things we did in our office was put a welcome packet folder with all the new team members because some had transitioned out, the QR code for some of the reviews, a little bio of the doctor, any receipts, any treatment plans went into this branded folder to enhance the perceived value of those patients coming in after the transition took place, right? So all of those things are going to be important for you to do this, to be able to have a transition plan that protects your goodwill so you can have happy patients as part of this process. We're almost there. So one of the things that I want to give to you guys for joining me today is I want to give you the top questions to ask as you're going through the due diligence process of having conversations with potential sellers for any deals that you're going into. I am going to have my team send that as part of the recording and the recap email, because I'm sure you've been getting emails from us, but like questions in terms of collections, for the last couple of months, you want to ask questions about reviewing the tax returns, all those things, right? About the location, the demographic makeup. Is it growing? Is it declining? The age group of those patients? Are there new practices that are opening nearby? Who are the major employers within the system? And also new employers that might have come into the practice, into the neighborhood. How is visibility, the space and facility? There are questions around there. The patient base, what questions to ask regarding that? Provider continuity, like how long do they want to stay on? What kind of treatment and services they want to do? What's that going to look like, right? The equipment, right? Like digital scanners, modern technology. What is the age and the conditions of those things? Do they have warranty stills that you can tap into, and so on and so forth? Are there any leases or services or liens on any of the equipment, right? Team and staffing, what questions to ask there. So I have an entire checklist. So anyone that is watching the recording and is interested in getting a copy of that, I'll be more than happy to send that to you. Everything covering from like the lease to all that information is definitely going to be very, very helpful to you. And if you're serious about basically that doing evaluation for a practice that is currently in your radar and that you're actively viewing for some reason, or want to just navigate getting help through it all, I want to invite you to basically schedule a time with me so you can basically connect and do all of your due diligence, right? So I'm going to do a quick recap before I go into some Q&A, because I want to be very grateful of your time today. Tonight, I basically taught you why relying on the system that it's most commonly used, the EBITDA alone, it's actually misleading, right? And how the ValuePoint system is a good alternative for you to be able to consider all of those intangibles that are part of the dynamics of being in a dental practice. We cover the 6 pillars of acquisition success. We broke down, like a real deal that looked good and it was over asking, and how we were able to negotiate down the price. We talked about common mistakes and pitfalls to protect your investment post closing, and what questions to ask before you buy. So here's the actual question that I want to ask you is, if you want to feel this kind of clarity, and you want support when the time comes, right? If the answer is yes, I would love to just basically help you if it makes sense for you to schedule a time to connect with me. So this is me in Dr. Sandhu's office. Took a nice group picture here. And if you're ready to basically go for a deep dive, I invite you to schedule a call with me. You can just basically scan this QR code. The only thing is that I only basically do 2 acquisitions per quarter, because this is very, very hands-on. There is a lot of, things that we have to do behind the scenes. And I personally come with my team to the offices post-closing. So it's not just here are the numbers, off you go. We do a lot of things in-house, and we, to make sure that our doctors are well taken care of, from the marketing, the insurance negotiations, the training of the staff, the valuation of the practice. Our team takes care of everything, and it is, important for me to be able to have the bandwidth to navigate that, because it's very intimate, the relationship that I build with my clients. And so I basically take 2 doctors a quarter. And if you are in this journey right now, and this is the time for you, I invite you to schedule a call with me right away. I'll leave that for a second. And let's basically answer some of your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you for showing up tonight, not just for me, but for yourselves, because this path takes a lot of courage, but you don't have to walk on this path alone. Whatever your next step is, start with clarity, with confidence, and just know that I am here if you need me. Thank you for trusting me with your time and your future. So, this decision, so you don't have to do it alone. And I'm really proud and excited to have you here tonight. I'll take down some of your questions. Thank you for the invitation, Roberta. Thank you for joining me tonight. Any questions, anybody that has any pressing questions before we wrap up? I will make sure that you get the copy of the replay with the PDF version of the the questionnaire to prepare for your site visit with the seller as needed. So if there are no questions, I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you again for joining me. And I will see you guys next month for my next upcoming webinar. I try to do a webinar every month so that I can keep you guys educated and informed. If you guys have any questions or topics that you would like for me to cover, let me know in the comments, or just shoot me an email. Because again, I've been in the trenches for over 25 years, worn every hat in a dental practice. And I want to make sure that as a first-time practice owner, I give you all the tools and strategies for you to be in a position to be profitable and fulfilled as a first-time practice owner. Everyone, thank you for joining me, and have a great night.